In 2005, a man stood before thousands of graduating students at one of the most prestigious universities in the world. He was not a professor. He was not a politician. He was a college dropout. He had been fired from the very company he built with his own hands. He had been diagnosed with cancer and told he might not survive. He had been broke. He had been lost. He had been publicly humiliated in ways that would have destroyed most people permanently. And yet, there he stood, and what he said in the next 18 minutes became the most watched commencement speech in human history. Not because he gave them a formula, not because he handed them a roadmap, but because he told them the truth. 2 sentences. That is all it was. 2 sentences at the end of a speech that changed the way millions of people think about their lives. Stay hungry. Stay foolish. 6 words. And we are going to spend the next few minutes understanding why those 6 words may be the most important advice anyone has ever given, and why most people hear them, nod their heads, and then go back to living the exact opposite way. This is the story of Steve Jobs. But more than that, this is the story of what happens when a human being refuses to be ordinary. And it starts, like all the best stories do, with loss. It is 1955, San Francisco. A young graduate student gives birth to a baby boy. She is unmarried. The father is absent. She makes the most painful decision of her life and places the child for adoption. The baby is taken in by a working-class couple, a machinist and a bookkeeper, people without college degrees, people without status, people without connections to the world of power and prestige. They name him Stephen. From the very first breath he draws, Steve Jobs is told by the circumstances of his birth that he is not from the right family, not from the right background, not the kind of person that the world reserves its greatest stages for. But here is the thing about Steve Jobs that you need to understand from the beginning. He never believed that. Not for a single day. His adoptive father, Paul, had a workbench in their garage, and that garage became something sacred. Paul would take apart electronics, explain how things worked, teach his son that you could understand anything if you were willing to take it apart and look inside. That garage planted a seed that said, the world is not fixed. The world is built by people, and people can be changed. Systems can be reimagined. Things that have always been done one way can be done a completely different way. That idea, the idea that the world around you is malleable, that it was built by people no smarter or more special than you, that idea became the engine of everything Steve Jobs would ever do. But before the engine roared, it had to be broken down completely. Let us talk about the part of the Steve Jobs story that the posters on college dorm walls leave out. Reed College, Portland, Oregon, 1972. Not because he is not intelligent, but because he cannot justify the financial burden his parents are carrying for a path he does not believe in. He watches them sacrifice everything for tuition fees for a life he cannot picture himself living. So he drops out, and then he does something that almost nobody would do. He stays. He sleeps on the floor of friends' dormitory rooms. He returns Coca-Cola bottles for the 5-cent deposit to buy food. He walks 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get a free meal at a Hare Krishna temple because he is that close to having nothing. He is not building a company. He is not networking. He is not following a plan. He is just trying to survive while following something he cannot fully explain. And in that survival mode, in that beautiful, desperate, uncertain season he sits in on a calligraphy class, just because it interests him, just because something about the art of beautiful letter forms pulls at something inside him that he cannot name. No practical application, no career path, no logical reason, just hunger. Just the foolish, inexplicable hunger of a person who follows what fascinates them even when it makes no sense to anyone around them. He could not have known, standing in that calligraphy class with no money and no plan, that 10 years later, the beautiful typography he was absorbing would become the foundation of the Macintosh computer's revolutionary design. The first personal computer with beautiful fonts. The beginning of a visual revolution in personal technology. But that is not where the real struggle lives. The real struggle comes later. It comes in 1985. Apple, the company he co-founded in a garage, the company he poured his soul into, the company he had built from nothing into something the world had never seen before. That company fires him, not gently, not quietly. They remove him from his own creation. The board votes him out. The man he himself had recruited to run the company turns against him. And Steve Jobs, 30 years old, publicly humiliated, stripped of the thing that defined him, is cast out into a world that is watching to see if he will collapse. He has spoken about that moment with raw honesty. He said he did not know what to do for months. He felt like he had let the previous generation of Silicon Valley pioneers down. He felt like he had dropped the baton. He felt like running away from everything. That is not a motivational poster moment. That is a man in genuine darkness. That is a person whose identity has been ripped away, and who is sitting in the wreckage trying to remember who he is without the thing he built. Do you know that feeling? Maybe not from being fired from your own company, but from losing something that you had built yourself, something that you had sacrificed for, something that was supposed to be the proof that your choices were right. We all know that feeling. And the question, the only question, is what you do next. What Steve Jobs did next was one of the most important things a human being can do after total collapse. He started again, not reluctantly, not bitterly, not while nursing the wound and waiting for revenge. He started again with the same hunger he had when he had nothing, with the same foolish belief that the thing he was building mattered, even though the world had just told him otherwise. He founded Next. He bought a small animation company from George Lucas for $5 million and turned it into Pixar. He fell in love. He got married. He had children. He built a life that was richer and deeper and more human than the one he had before the fall. And then, in 1997, Apple, the company that had fired him, was 90 days from bankruptcy, and they called him back. He walked back into the building they had thrown him out of 12 years earlier, and within a year, he had turned a dying company into the beginning of the most extraordinary product run in the history of consumer technology. The iMac, the iPod, iTunes, the iPhone, the iPad. Each one not just a product, but a complete reimagining of what was possible. And here is what he said about being fired. Here is the turning point that lives inside the turning point. He said it was the best thing that ever happened to him. He said the heaviness of success had been replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again, free from the prison of having already won, free to be uncertain, hungry, foolish, curious, unencumbered. The fall did not end his story. The fall was the story. Lesson 1. You cannot connect the dots looking forward. Steve Jobs spent a semester studying calligraphy with no plan. It made no sense. It produced no immediate result. It looked from the outside like the behavior of someone with no direction. 10 years later, it changed the world, and this is the first great lesson of his life. You cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward, which means that the things you are doing right now that seem pointless in the interests you are following that have no obvious career application, the skills you are building that nobody is paying you for yet, the detours that feel like failures, those are the dots. Trust them, not blindly, not passively, but with the deep, grounded confidence that a life lived with genuine curiosity and genuine hunger does not waste experiences. It accumulates them. It stores them. And at some point, on a timeline that you cannot predict and cannot control, they connect into something extraordinary. The question is not whether the dots will connect. The question is whether you will follow them far enough to find out. Lesson 2. Getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to him. And your worst moment may be your greatest gift. We need to talk about failure differently, not the motivational poster version of a failure where every setback is secretly a setup, and every loss is secretly a lesson neatly wrapped in a bow. The real version, the version where it genuinely hurts, where you genuinely do not know if you will recover, where the darkness is real and the doubt is overwhelming and you cannot see any light from where you are standing. Steve Jobs did not immediately know that being fired was a gift. He said it felt like a public failure. He said he thought about running away from Silicon Valley entirely. The gift was not visible in the moment. It only became visible in the living through it. And this is what I need you to carry with you. The worst thing that has ever happened to you is not necessarily working against your story. It may be the very thing your story requires. The fire that burns away what was never. really yours, so that what is truly yours can finally grow. What has been taken from you? What have you lost that you built your identity around? Because if Steve Jobs had never been fired, there would have been no Pixar. There would have been no personal transformation. There would have been no iPhone. The loss was the door. Your loss may be your door too. Lesson 3, stay hungry as comfort. Is the enemy of greatness here? Is the uncomfortable truth about human beings. We are wired for comfort. We are wired to find safety, to reduce uncertainty, to build walls around what we have already achieved and protect it from the chaos outside. And comfort and slow, sweet, seductive comfort is the single greatest killer of human potential that has ever existed. Not failure, not opposition, not circumstances. Comfort, the moment you stop being hungry, is the moment you start dying. Professionally, creatively, spiritually. The moment you decide you have arrived is the moment you begin the long, invisible, comfortable slide toward irrelevance. Jobs understood this in his bones. He never stopped being hungry, not at the bottom of the failure, not at the top of the success. He was hungry at 20. He was hungry at 50. He was hungry in the garage and hungry in the boardroom and hungry in the hospital bed where he spent his final years. And the hunger was not about money. It was not about power. It was about the relentless, almost irrational belief that there was always something more to make, something better to build, something closer to perfect that the world had not seen yet. Stay hungry, not for more stuff, not for more status. Hungry for the work, hungry for the craft, hungry for the impact, hungry for the version of your life that you have not yet built. Stay hungry. Lesson 4, stay foolish. The world's best ideas always sound crazy first. In 1976, 2 men in a garage told the world they were going to build a personal computer. The world laughed. Computers were the size of rooms. Computers were for corporations and governments and research institutions. The idea that an ordinary person would have a computer on their desk, in their home, was not just unlikely. It was foolish. They did it anyway. In 2007, a man walked onto a stage and told the world he was going to put a phone, an iPod, and an internet browser into a single device and reinvent the entire mobile phone industry. The world's largest mobile phone companies laughed. Nokia, BlackBerry, Motorola, all of them laughed. He did it anyway. The pattern of Steve Jobs' entire life is the pattern of a person willing to look foolish in the service of something they believed in completely, willing to be wrong in public, willing to be called crazy, willing to hold the vision even when everyone around them was shaking their head. Stay foolish, not naive, not reckless, but willing. Willing to believe in something before the evidence arrives. Willing to build before the world understands what you are building. Willing to follow the thing that burns inside you, even when it makes no logical sense to the people around you. Because the things that change the world never make sense before they change it. Stay foolish. In 2004, Steve Jobs was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and he was told he had 3 to 6 months to live. He sat with that. He sat in the quiet of a diagnosis that most people would never recover from emotionally, even if they survived physically. And what came out of that sitting, what emerged from that confrontation with mortality, was the clearest, most distilled version of everything he had ever believed about how a human life should be lived. He said this. He said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life." He said, "Almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important." He said, "You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. You are already naked. Sit with that. Strip away the fear of what people think. Strip away the safe choices made for the wrong reasons. Strip away the life you have been performing for an audience that does not love you as much as your own soul does. You are already naked. All you have is this life. This one. The one you are living right now in this body at this moment, with these gifts and these wounds and these years that are passing, whether you use them or not." Steve Jobs died on October 5, 2011. He was 56 years old. He had built products that billions of people carry in their pockets every single day. He had created stories that made children laugh and cry and believe in the impossible. He had stood in front of audiences and redefined what human beings thought technology could feel like. But here's what I want you to take from his life. Not the products, not the company. The refusal, stubborn, consistent, lifelong, to trade the life he was meant to live for the safer, quieter, more comfortable life that was always available to him. He stayed hungry when he had nothing. He stayed hungry when he had everything. He stayed foolish when the world laughed. He stayed foolish when the world watched. And the world is better for it. The question is whether your world, your small, precious, unrepeatable world, will be better because you had the courage to do the same. So here is where we land. Not at the end of Steve Jobs' story. At the beginning of yours. I am asking you to do one thing today. Just one. Look at your life honestly, with the eyes of someone who knows that time is finite and that safety is a slow kind of death, and ask yourself the question that Steve Jobs asked himself every single morning. He said that every morning he would look in the mirror and ask, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And he said that whenever the answer was no for too many days in a row, he knew something needed to change. Ask yourself that question, not as a performance, not as a journaling exercise, as a real, honest, unflinching evaluation of the life you are building versus the life you are capable of living. Because the hunger does not disappear just because you ignore it. It just turns inward. It just becomes regret. Slow, quiet, accumulated regret. The most expensive thing a human being can carry. Do not carry it, feed the hunger instead. Embrace the foolishness. Follow the dots even when they do not connect yet. Get up after the fall and start again with the lightness of someone who has nothing left to lose. Build the thing that sounds crazy to everyone else, but feels inevitable to you. Stay hungry. Stay foolish. Because the world was not changed by people who played it safe. It was not built by people who waited until they were ready. It was not shaped by people who chose comfort over calling. It was changed by the hungry ones, the foolish ones, the ones who looked at the world as it was and refused, absolutely, stubbornly, gloriously refused, to accept that this was all it could be. You are one of those people. You would not be here if you were not. Now go prove it. If this video moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Leave a comment with the one thing you have been too afraid to start. Subscribe to Motivation Arc because every single week we bring you stories that do not just inspire you. They remind you of who you already are. Stay hungry. Stay foolish. We will see you in the next one.